So welcome again. This training is focusing on using MassEnergyInsight for energy management. Just to kick off, our lesson today is going to be focusing on just a quick recap on how to achieve and maintain green communities designation. Gonna pose, I know we covered that at the in-person orientation on September 17th, but if there's any lingering questions on that, we'll have time to address it today. We also want to touch on how to track and analyze your municipality's energy usage using MEI and identifying and prioritizing energy projects. In terms of learning objectives, again, understanding the 5 Green Communities criteria and annual reporting requirements, how to set up and organize data onto MEI, and identifying trends, errors, and gaps in energy data, and using advanced project planning tools. So, um, you guys will, for the energy managers, you'll notice that this will be a very similar structure for all of our future trainings. We're going to kick off with the lesson question, the learning objectives, and then actually want to do a poll on how familiar folks are with the various training topics that we're going to be covering. So today is MEI. I'm going to launch a quick poll and ask you all to just rate your level of agreement with the following statements. So I'll give you guys a minute to do that. To what extent do you feel comfortable with the Green Communities Program requirements and resources? How comfortable are you using and organizing data on MEI and identifying trends and errors and advanced project planning tools? So I'll give you guys just one more minute. It'll take 10 more seconds to answer if you haven't already. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and share results. Looks like most folks are comfortable with the Green Communities Program and requirements, although a couple of folks still need to get up to speed on that. Got quite the mix in terms of organizing data on MEI, but that's great that you're here because that's exactly what we're going to touch on today. And then most folks need more help understanding or identifying trends, errors, gaps, and using advanced project planning tools on MEI. So glad that you're here. We're going to touch on all of those today. Thank you for that. And now I want to introduce our trainer, Mark Rubinski from DOER, and we'll then hand it off to you, Mark.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. It's going to look the same. All right. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Great. So hi, everyone. I'm Mark Rubinski. I'm the Deputy Director of the Green Communities Program at DOER. So I'm going to give a overview mostly of MEI today. I can also answer a lot of green communities questions as well about being designated, the criteria that are involved with green communities. I know Joanne had given an overview at the launch the other day when we had that initial meeting. Was that last week or 2 weeks ago? It was a couple weeks ago, right? And so I know she went over the criteria and talked about green communities, the grant opportunities. So I'm not going to go over that as much today, but I can if you want to. So if there are specific questions at the end, I'm happy to discuss those. And we can take some time to answer those, or another good resource is to always contact your regional coordinator who would be able to help you or guide you in the right direction at least. So today, as I mentioned, we're gonna go over MEI, talk about what is MEI, how to organize your municipal data in MEI, some of the report features that are in MassEnergyInsight, and talk about what I call the MEI plus features, some of the features that we've been adding over the past 3 years or so to make MEI a little bit more robust, user-friendly, cut down on some of the reporting requirements, or not really the requirements, but at least the reporting efforts that communities used to have to go through. And it's actually gotten a little bit easier over the years, I think. And then we'll save some time at the end for questions. This time, it's probably a little bit ambitious of me sticking to all of these exactly. There's a lot of very specific time periods that I would have to stick to. I'm probably going to be jumping around a lot. I'm going to be going back and forth between the slides that we have on here and MEI to give you a live demo. I'm going to use another fake town that we just set up called Trainsburg. Wasn't my idea for the name, but I do really like the name of it. And please stop me along the way to ask questions. I think you could probably raise your hand. I think I'll be able to see it because I don't necessarily see everybody's image on the screen because I have the slides open and stuff. But so I guess before I begin, sticking to the schedule, are there any questions on green communities from the last presentation that Joanne had given in the first meeting before we start? I know that's a really broad question for me to ask. Are there any questions about green communities? But they could be questions about the criteria, the 5 criteria, the designation process.
I just wanted to check in with the folks who said either disagree or strongly disagree on the previous poll about how comfortable you feel with the Green Communities program. If you feel comfortable speaking up and sharing a little bit of where the confusion lies, or if you want to throw that in the chat, just want to make sure that you have any information or resources that you need to move forward.
Okay. Um, and you can always ask questions at the end. You can always ask those questions. This is our job. We're here to answer questions about green communities. So, are there questions coming in the chat? I can't see the chat.
Got one question from Christine from Yarmouth.
Oh,
What is the website for iMeet?
yeah. So, the instructions for how to submit a grant. It looks like somebody might have shared the PON, the program opportunity notice, or maybe no, just the straight Combis website. Let me share the competitive grant PON, and then when you download the PDF from that website, from the Combis website, it'll have instructions on how to submit an application through iMeet, and the iMeet website is in there too. But you need a password and username in order to submit something through iMeet, and there's instructions in there about how to request one in order to submit a grant opportunity.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go on to what is MEI, Mass Energy Insight. So I'm going to give an overview of Mass Energy Insight today. There's a lot of new features, like I said, in Mass Energy Insight. There's a lot of old features that are kind of old hat to us that I'm also going to be talking about today. So it might be boring for some of you that are seasoned users of Mass Energy Insight, but I got to start somewhere. So the Mass Energy Insight team is Green Communities. Green Communities is the program at the state that does the facilitation, the management of Mass Energy Insight. We essentially have the contract for it, and we go out for a vendor that really does the data management, site design, and that vendor is Optimizer. And Optimizer is a company that's been managing MassEnergyInsight for a while for us. Gamaliel and Keith are our main contacts there, and they do a really great job of taking my crazy ideas and implementing them into MEI, so that we can give the communities, the towns out there a better product, and hopefully try and simplify their life, and also while still meeting the green communities requirements, the reporting requirements. UMass Amherst, you might be surprised to see UMass Amherst on there. UMass does our help desk and our FAQ updates. Lauren Madison, who's on the call today as well, is our main contact over there. And I asked Lauren to be here because sometimes I get questions that I can't answer about MEI, but Lauren's also come up with them. If you send a question through the help desk, which I highly recommend doing, I'm always hesitant. I think I had to return something to Amazon yesterday, and I was just dreading like contacting the help desk. I was like, I don't want to do this. And it was difficult. It was painful. I didn't like it. But I don't think that's going to be your experience with MEI. MEI is usually really good about is very good about answering your help desk questions. And it's rarely a question that they haven't come up against. And if they don't know the answer, then they'll come to me and ask questions. I have weekly meetings with them to discuss outstanding help desk tickets, potential bugs that might be in MEI, and go over things and just make the process a little bit better. But even before you reach out with a help desk ticket, you might want to check the FAQ. This isn't, one of those FAQs with just a few questions on it. Once again, Lauren and her team keep it updated for questions that are frequently asked, which is where it comes from. And they do a great job of updating it. And it's very detailed, and she'll often send questions to me, so we'll look through them together to make sure that the wording is right on there. So yeah, I highly recommend looking at the FAQ even before submitting a help desk ticket, but don't hesitate to submit a help desk ticket either. So the first screen for MassEnergyInsight, some of you may be familiar with this. We've made a lot of updates over the years. Our home screen isn't one of them. We haven't really updated the home screen too much. I think it's been the same ever since we've started. It's just a place for your username and password. Talks a little bit about MEI. Even if you don't have your username and password, you can still contact support and some of the training through here too. So you don't even have to log in order to get some of that support. Here's the frequently asked questions again. Once again, highly recommend going to the frequently asked questions. They do a really good job keeping it updated. For those of you that haven't gotten permission yet for MEI or are in the process of it, there is a template in the frequently asked questions. There's a link to it in there, the FAQ. You have to have this signed by your chief elected or appointed official from the municipality, which is usually if for a town, it's the select board chair. Sometimes it could be the town administrator if they have signing authority, and they're able to do it. Otherwise, for a city, it could be a mayor or a city manager if they have signing authority. It's the chief elected or appointed official for the municipality. For a school district, it could be the superintendent or the school board chair could also do it too. So whoever has signing authority for that, because it's their information and they're the ones that are providing it to us. So you'd submit the letter via email to your Green Communities coordinator. You don't need to mail it into us, physically mail it into us. We still get a lot of letters in the mail, and we usually just shred them after like taking a copy of them. So you'll take a copy of it, has a signature on it. You'll mail it to us. We recommend that you keep a file or keep a copy on file, but you don't need to mail it physically to us. And you'll send that to your Green Communities Coordinator. I know it says Joanne Bissetta on the file here, but it doesn't need to be sent to Joanne. It can just be sent to your Green Communities Coordinator. And they're the ones that actually set you up too. They'll set up the username and password for you and then provide that to you. The newsletter. We have a good newsletter. And things that I think make a good newsletter is they're very timely topics, and they only go out when we have actual news to share with you. We don't just send out newsletters just because we want to send out a newsletter. You know, we will typically send a few more newsletters around this time of year because it's annual reporting season. And there's some training going on right now. There's some features being updated, but that's generally when we send out the newsletter. So please sign up for the newsletter. In the FAQ, there's a place to actually sign up for the newsletter. This is different than the Green Communities newsletter. There's a separate Green Communities newsletter that I also recommend you sign up for. And that's in a separate place, and you can ask us for the link to that. But you can also see the recent MEI newsletters in the FAQ as well. So if you just want to see what's come out recently about the annual reporting, recommend looking through that. We won't spam you with stuff, promise. The beta site. So as I said, we've been updating a lot of things in MEI over the past few years, and MEI has been getting kind of slow, to be honest, as we're accessing so much data. It's actually always been a little bit slow. But the beta site, which when I bring you through MEI today, when I do some of the screen sharing, I'm going to be doing it in the beta site, not in the old site, because we're going to be moving towards that. And also, it's a lot faster, and it drives me crazy when I go back to the old one now. It's like when you get like a new updated technology and you try and go back to the old one, you're like, oh, how did I do this? It's so slow. But we're keeping when you log into MEI, it's going to go to the old or to the current website, the old website, I'll call it. And then in the top there, it says, you know, do you want to use the beta site? I recommend using the beta site. And if you don't like it, you can return to the old site, but eventually we are going to be using the beta site all the time. It uses live data, so I just want everyone to know that even though it's a beta site, it's still gonna hit your current live data. And then if you do find some bugs in it, even that bug's kind of creeping me out on the screen there. I'm gonna switch this slide soon, but if you do find any bugs in the new website, please take a screenshot, send it to us through the support ticket. Even going through like this training exercise, I found a few bugs that I sent to Optimizer, and they were very fast to fix them. So it was a good training opportunity for me to, or at least experience for me to go through this training, because I was able to catch some bugs. All right, now I'm going to get off this screen. Okay, a learning check. We're doing learning checks now.
Yeah, so we're gonna have these scattered throughout the trainings and all of the trainings moving forward. This is not like a gotcha, you're not gonna be graded. It's just if you didn't catch Mark saying it earlier, hopefully you can catch it now.
I'm grading them. No, I'm not. I'm joking.
So I'm gonna launch this poll, just take a minute. Who needs to sign the MEI authorization letter? Town clerk, planning director, municipality's chief elected or appointed official, the utility, or your green communities regional coordinator.
Well, they shouldn't be able to see it because now they see everybody else's answer, right?
I think that's just us. I think,
Oh, just us? Okay.
yeah.
Maybe only I can see it.
Just take 30 more seconds. Take 5 more seconds, submit your answer, and then the great reveal.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Rick.
Is it revealed? Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's the municipality's chief elected or appointed official needs to sign it. Hopefully that wasn't too much of a trick question. The regional coordinator is where it would get submitted to. So when after the chief elected official signs it, then you would submit it to the regional coordinator. And the reason, and this is important, the reason that it's the chief elected or appointed official, which we call the CEO sometimes of the town, is that it's the town's data or the city's data. The city is the one that owns it. It's not the utilities data. It's not our data. It's the town's. So, which is why when folks reach out to us for access to it, they're like, "Well, why can't you just give us access to it?" And it's like, it's not my data. It's not, the state's data. It's the town's. That's how we're allowed to share the data with others. So that's one kind of important reason around here is who has the ownership of it. So we can. Yep. Let's see. Oh, so basic site navigation. I'm going to go over some. I'm going to share my screen now and go over some basic site navigation. I'm going to switch. So give me a second. All right. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So after you've signed in to MassEnergyInsight, you'll see this screen right here. It's the um, it's the main check-in site. And I usually skip right over the screen, but there are some good updates on this. The utility data says when we're expecting to get files from the different utilities that are out there. So Eversource, you'll see, and Eversource is split up into multiple Eversource companies. They used to be Wamico, which was Western Mass Electric Company, NSTAR, and Columbia Gas too. So sometimes we get files from those entities on different dates, but Eversource can mean different things. Eversource West, Eversource East, and National Grid Electric and National Grid Gas, and then Unitil. So these are the utilities that send us information. Some on here, you'll see the recent newsletters too that have come out. If you want to look at some past newsletters, you can sign up here too, not just in the FAQ, but you can sign up for the newsletter on this site as well. Let's see. So basic site navigation, you'll see organized data up here. Actually before that, in the upper right, there's a drop-down list, and this isn't going to be available for everybody, only if you have access to multiple towns. So normally when I'm signed in, I would have access to every single town, but I'm signed in as my test account right now. And I only in my test account, I only have access to Trainsburg, which is the town that I set up, and then Ames. And you all often see us share stuff with Ames because it's just a fake town that was made up a long time ago. I think originally it was we duplicated Amesbury's data, and so that's where we got the name Ames from. But all that data is gone now, and we've uploaded completely new data for Ames, so it has nothing to do with Amesbury anymore. Um, and when we created Trainsburg, we just copied Ames data in there because I wanted to manipulate a lot of the data without affecting Ames. So these are the two that I have. And some of you may have access to a regional school district in here. So you would see the regional school district show up separately. Or you may have 5 or 6 towns. So there's a number of the energy managers will have access to multiple towns, and they'd be able to toggle in between these. In the olden days, like a year ago, we used to have like multiple logins for every single community. But with some of the new MEI features that they implemented, we were able to just do this toggling back and forth and switching without having to sign out and sign back in with a different username. So it makes it a lot easier for us to move back and forth. So this is an important drop-down feature. If you only have one, you're only going to see one. And then I think this DOER right here just says who I like, what company I belong to. So you might see something different up here. Organized data is the organized data screen, which I'll go over in a little bit more detail later. For Trainsburg, you'll see the different facilities that they have in here. You'll see, you can click on here and you'll be able to see the accounts within here. So this Animal E, normally this would be a number, but when we set up these accounts, I didn't put in numbers because it was hard for me to keep track of. So Animal E is just the electric count for the animal shelter. Cemetery G is the gas account for the cemetery building. So those are how I set it up. Normally you'll see long strings of numbers that have to do with the utility. This is organized data. This is an important part of how your town is set up in here. The next screen, the next piece is the upload spreadsheet. We actually haven't configured this for the new site yet, the upload spreadsheet screen. So if you do want to upload a spreadsheet in MEI, you'd have to return to the old site to do it. I recommend if you have more than, say, a half dozen entries to use the upload spreadsheet screen. It doesn't take that long to just type it in if you have a few entries. Like if you're just entering in oil data for, one account, then you might just, and you only have one number in there, it might just be easier to type in the number under that account than uploading a whole spreadsheet with just a few on it. Yeah. Reports is the screen that I go to more often to see in towns. It gives me, and I'm going to go over reports in a lot of detail later, but let me see how I am on time. Yeah, so I'm going to go over reports a lot more later, each one of these. Support, I mentioned support. There are some videos on here that you can watch. Note the note on here. The videos below may contain references to legacy reports. So there may, and it will also be on the old site too, because when a lot of these videos were made, they weren't using the beta site, obviously, because it didn't exist. And the MEI annual report, these videos on here, unfortunately, you have to listen to me talk even more. But they go over how to do the actual annual report in MEI. So if you have questions about that, I highly recommend watching the videos because they took me a long time to do. So if you could watch those, that'd be great. And talks about, how to change the name of something. But when you watch these videos, they could look really old and they might look a little bit different than what you see in MEI right now. We do have plans to update these. But we want to fully launch the beta site. We want to get through the annual reporting season, and then we'll be able to redo all the videos on here. But I think they'd probably point you in the right direction, at least for now. The support site, I mentioned the videos, the FAQ, got so much on here about the FAQ. I'll usually just go in and do a Control F on here and try and find the subject of what I'm looking for. But you see how many questions we have on here, and they do a great job of Laura and her team do a great job of keeping it updated. What else we have? Glossary. I never really go to this, but it kind of, if you have questions when you're setting up a town, if some of you are out there setting up towns, and you're like, well, what do I put in as what is open space? When do I use that category? So it could be any number of these things would go under open space. So it can answer some of the questions about really the categories of what you're choosing for those facilities as you're setting up MassEnergyInsight for your municipality. And then contact support too. There's a place in here to upload images if you do run into a bug. Take a screenshot if you're on a Windows computer. I think it's at least on mine, it's the Windows key, Shift S is the screenshot key. And you drag it and it takes a copy of it and you save it and then upload it to here. And you can submit your question in here to ask support. They're great about getting back to you. What else? Oh, annual reports. So in that drop-down screen, there's more things in here. Annual reports hasn't been started for Trainsburg yet, which is okay. It's still got a little over a month. But this brings you through the process of submitting your annual reports for the Green Communities program. And this goes through, that really brings you through the 5 criteria, which is what you have to report on to make sure that you're still in compliance and still in good standing with Green Community. And I will talk about annual reports a little bit later as well. And then ESPN, not ESPN. That would be cool if we had ESPN on here, but this is ESPN. And ESPN is Energy Star Portfolio Manager. We offer the ability for MEI to connect to Energy Star Portfolio Manager. We've actually always offered that. There are some communities that even before Green Community started, before MEI started, they used Portfolio Manager to track their energy use, and they didn't want to duplicate efforts. So we set up a poll. We pulled data from Energy Star Portfolio Manager and added it to MEI. But we can also push data to it. And so this, over the past year, really became very popular. And Optimizer did a really good job of rolling this out very quickly earlier this year when communities started having to report on their large building energy reporting use. So some of you might be familiar with the over 20,000 square feet. Any building over 20,000 square feet in the Commonwealth has to report on their energy use. And one of the ways to do that is to use Energy Star. So if you're already reporting in MassEnergyInsight, we said, hey, we'll just connect it to Portfolio Manager, and then you can report through the LBR program as well. There's a lot of connections in place. So even some of you may have received emails recently that you're not in compliance, but there's a lot of different authorization steps that have to happen. So if you did receive any of those emails, it's likely that there was just some authorization that wasn't checked at some end. And I would recommend reaching out to the LBR team if it's one of those authorizations. If you're having problems with connecting MEI to Energy Star, then you can reach out to us. That's on our side. If you're having problems connecting Energy Star to LBR, you'd have to reach out to the LBR team because that's outside of our knowledge base. But to go through the process in here, this is what you would fill out to connect to Energy Star. And that's it for the site navigation. Where are we on time? All right, I'm going to go over some organizing data now. I'm going to jump to the organizing data. All right, I'm going to move on to the next subject. Organizing data. Oh yeah. So I'm not going to share my slides right now, but one of the next slide, it talks about delivered fuels. So I just want people to know like what delivered fuels are. Delivered fuels, unlike natural gas, unlike electricity, that comes to you from the utility, delivered fuels are any fuels that are delivered, usually physically via, often via truck to your site. So it could be oil, heating oil, propane. It could be diesel, wood, gasoline. Diesel and gasoline, 99% of the time, they are going to be used for your vehicle fleets. So you'll have a fueling station in the municipality that will have diesel and gasoline delivered to it. Oil and propane will also be delivered. Um, and then, there's very rare cases where some towns do get wood pellets or cords of wood or wood chips delivered. And we have a means to have those entered as well. But we don't have relationships with all of the oil and propane deliveries in the Commonwealth. Wish we did. That'd be pretty cool. I mean, have all those uploaded automatically. But so those need to be entered manually by the MEI users so that we can have a better understanding of how much energy you use. So the thing about delivered fuels that I want to mention is that when you enter that in there, that's not necessarily when that fuel was used. It's when it was delivered. So we have a lot of schools that, will get, it'll look like they used 10,000 gallons of oil in July. Like that's not when it used it. That's just when it was delivered. That's when you got billed for it. That's when you put it in there. So there is some pluses and minuses to it's usually like more of a drawback for delivered fuels is one, you can enter them all at once. It's nice. But the drawback is that's not actually when it was used. And you're really, unless you have amazing metering on that oil or propane system, you're not going to know necessarily when you're using that fuel. And that can affect our weather normalization. I'll talk about weather normalization in a minute too. Another fuel that doesn't seem like it should be considered delivered, but it kind of is, or at least we treat it like one, is behind the meter solar energy. So solar is really difficult from a metering perspective because a lot of the utilities treat solar really differently. And I'm talking about behind the meter solar, not virtual net metered solar. Like if you're buying solar off site and then just applying it to your bill, it's not really going to affect your bill. It's only going to affect the dollar amount on your bill, not really the actual bill itself. But if you have behind the meter solar energy, oftentimes you could have a negative bill, or you could have a really low bill, and because you're selling that, there are some months you could be giving that energy, you could be creating excess energy for your building. So what we ask that you do is get the information from your production tracking system. So your solar energy, if you do have behind the meter, will keep track of how much electricity it generates. And we ask that you upload that information to MEI separately. And there are some checks in MEI that we've built in over the past year to say, like, does this make sense? Does this number make sense? Is this how much electricity a 10 kW system should generate? And during the annual reporting process, some errors might pop up and say, this doesn't actually look right to us. And sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes it's like, this doesn't look right to us because the system was broken for half the year. And that's okay. That makes sense that it would have only generated half the electricity. Or, there was a problem with the production tracking system, which happens a lot too. Or yeah, Beth.
Sorry.
Mhm.
Just as an FYI, Mark, you may want to start digging into how Eversource, and I'm now digging into National Grid also, but how Eversource is actually treating these behind the meter solar arrays with respect to the interface with the smart meters, right? So
Yeah,
there's a production tracking system that's going to show how much electricity has been generated by the behind the meter solar, but some of it's going to be gobbled up in the building. Some is going to be exported to the utility. There's a lot
Mhm.
of data that's now being provided on Eversource invoices, and it's messy.
It is. Yeah, we've
And
met
how
with.
it and how any of that gets pushed down, and if it is getting commingled and pushed down into MEI, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, so there is. I could spend a good 3 hours on this subject alone, probably. Um, and I have spent probably multiples of time on that. And Lauren, I'm sure is laughing on the line too, because we've met with Eversource a number of times and looked at their bills with them and said, well, this one's different than this one. And sometimes it has to do with whether it's Eversource West or Eversource East. Oftentimes it'll have to do with what meter they have on site. You mentioned the smart meters. So it depends on a number of things. Overall, in general, usually what's going to happen for the municipality is they will have to upload their production tracking system at some point. Yeah, Lauren, thank you for jumping in. You're probably
Sure.
not laughing either.
No crying. Oh, let me turn my video on. Yeah, I've been involved with MEI for like 5 years, I think, and Eversource solar data has been an issue that whole time. We have been in discussions with them, especially since they changed their system last year, and we're hoping that they will be making some changes in their next data delivery that will make the lives of our source customers who have solar on their buildings easier, but we kind of have to wait and see if that works out. And then some changes will be needed on the MEI end to accommodate the Eversource changes. So the main thing I wanted to say is we post updates on things like this on the MEI homepage. So when you first, after you log in, you see that getting started page. And up at the top of there, there's often an update, and that often is related to Eversource data. So we'll keep you updated there as things develop. But it's certainly something we are aware of and doing our best to address.
Thanks, Lauren. But yeah, and that was one of the things that I had written into the next kind of 3-year plan for Optimizer too, was we got to get a better handle on the solar data and how that's portrayed. But a lot of that's on the utility, because the utilities just report it off so differently. Yeah, Beth.
Just another really quick note. So, I mean, MEI is a great relational database, right? It allows you to gather, manipulate, analyze, and do a whole bunch of stuff with data. But like any good database, garbage in is garbage out, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And one of the things and this is just sort of cautionary to folks, don't just take data and accept it. Look at it. So important to look at the data and use some common sense as to whether or not it makes sense, right? Because if the utility cancels and rebills, and that happens a number of times during a year for one reason or another, there was an estimated read and a variety of other things. Just I would encourage, as the data is populating, which is an amazing and super useful tool, but just look at the data on a monthly basis when you're analyzing the data, even if it's every 6 months or whatever, because you get a much better idea as to whether and how the building is really performing and whether there's a data integrity issue, because it happens.
Yeah, the utilities aren't immune to making mistakes either. We will see that happen every so often, and sometimes it works out in communities' favors and they don't want to tell them, but usually the utility will end up discovering it at some point. But yeah, that certainly happens. Thank you for that comment.
Going off of what Beth said, is there a way to see data in like a chart format, just to like do a quick gut check to make sure that it's following a good trend?
Yeah, and I'll show that through the report section too.
Great, thank you.
Yep. So I'm gonna go over a little bit more and organize data about how like a facility is added, and how a facility is set up, and then an account is added to that. So in this case, Trainsburg, I'm going to create a new entity or a new facility in here. And so Trainsburg just put in a water pump. So I'm going to save that. It's going to bring me to details about that water pump. You're going to want to put in I'm going to skip some of these for now, but you're going to want to put in the address, and especially the gross floor area is really important to us. Now, I say that not with water pumps so much, not with anything that has to do with water or wastewater, because we don't always look at the square footage is important to us because it has to do with EUI, which is the energy use intensity. And that's how we can compare buildings to one another, almost like MPG of a vehicle. But with anything that has to do with water or wastewater, the the energy typically it's really not tied to the size of the building. It's usually more tied to the equipment within the building. So it's hard to compare two different water facilities with one another by the size of the building. It's not possible. One of the things that we will use is like the flow rate of those. That's how you should compare water. With that caveat being said, you should still put in the gross floor area in there. And so I'm going to put in 800 square feet, and it's effective from, you can leave these blanks for original and current. You'll use these if you have to do building stock changes within MEI. And I can show you how to do that later, or you could also watch one of my annual report videos on how to do that. So you do have to pick the category. So this is water sewer. This is drinking water pumping. You don't want to mix those up. And it's not a school, so you can keep that blank. If you wanted to sync this to portfolio manager, this is when it says portfolio manager, it means the ESPN portfolio manager. You can do that. If you want to exclude it from the baseline, you can. What that means is that every green community has a baseline year in which they became a green community, or the year that they chose when they became a green community. It's usually a year or two before when they became a green community. And if you don't know your community's baseline year, you can reach out to your regional coordinator, and they can tell you what the community's baseline year is. But you can exclude those from the baseline. So if I added this in afterwards, you don't want it then look like you had a big jump in energy when that really shouldn't be affecting your baseline year. So I'm not going to exclude this just for the sake of doing here, but you could exclude it from baseline. And then it was built last year. So I'm going to save that. I could put in a U-bid in here if I wanted to sync it for LBR, but I'm not doing it for LBR. And then I can see now back to the tree that we have a water pump facility in here. So I did set up a water pump electric account in here previously so that I could just move it in there. I would go through this really similar process of creating a new electric account, put in who the provider is. Normally you're going to put in Eversource or National Grid, but there's a lot of different municipal light plants in here. There's a number of different ones in here, but I just chose a different provider because I didn't want that information going to Eversource. You see, I did this yesterday. Okay, and then the usages. Normally, you would get the usages coming in automatically from the utility, but this is a fake one, so I just entered them in manually. So you can add a usage by putting in the from date, the to date. So I just did it annually, like from the fiscal year July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, and then that's how many kilowatt hours of electricity that station or that facility used. You can see it says I did this as a manual entry too, which is nice if you're ever looking back and you say, was this automatically done or did somebody put this in there? So it's nice to know some of those pieces. If you had the use demand, you could put that in as well if you want to track even more information on it. And those are the peak demands within a cycle for it. And then I put in the cost too, just based on the cost of electricity. So when I go back to Trainsburg, I do want to show you one thing. So I'm going to jump to the reports thing, even though I haven't shown you too many of the reports yet. Let me go in a report table 2. You can update this too. So data last updated. It used to take 24 hours for reports to update in MEI, but now you can just do it by updating it in here, which is really nice. So I could look at it by category. So these are buildings, streetlights, vehicles, and water and sewer. And then you'll see in here it says null also. And the reason that this says null, and this is a very common mistake with green communities when, especially during the annual report processes, one of the big common questions that we'll have for you is we'll say you need to recategorize your null data. And the reason that this is showing up in null is that it's really a floating account, because this account, this water pump electric account, was set up, but it was set up under Trainsburg. It wasn't set up yet under the water pump facility. So it doesn't know that this water pump electric account has to go in here. And you can simply just drag and drop it into there. Now the water pump electric account is under the water pump. So if I go back to the report screen, annual reports, it still shows up as null there, but hey, it worked. So now it's gone because I updated it, and it added that electric data into the water and sewer piece for those past 2 years that were in there. So that's how you can recategorize null. You'd have to find which account it is and then move that into there. And there are advanced features, and I'll show you that during the reports process too, about how to actually find those accounts and then move them around. Okay, another thing I wanted to show all of you is so the Trainsburg High School, in this case, actually had a building stock change this year. They added, I don't know why, they added 20,000 square feet. They needed extra storage or something. So what you would do is if you have building stock changes, you can click on the gross floor area, and you'll see that, this facility was built in 2008 and it's current. At least it thinks that it's current, but it's not, because let's say 2 years ago or 1 year ago, they added 20,000 square feet. So what I would do is I would say this building is now 230,066 square feet because they added 20,000. And it's effective from a year ago. So we'll say 7/1/2024, and it's current for today. So I'm going to save that. Oops, you know what? I gotta do this. So that's 7/1/2024. And then so save that. And then, because I forgot to put the effective date on the one below it. 66 2000. So you do the day after that, day 2/2024, and then it's a current for today. So this is how you would do a building stock change for when you have fluctuations. And sometimes you can annex part of the building, or like a building decreases, and like, oh, we tore down, a wing of the building, and that's now the building's even smaller. So it helps us understand the current square footage of the building, and it affects your EUI, because if you take down part of the building, it's going to look like, like, whoa, how'd they save so much energy? Well, they really didn't. They took down part of their building. Or if they add more to it, you're like, why are they using so much more energy this year? Well, that's where the building stock change comes into place. And we do calculations behind the scene, and you'll see in the annual report screen that automatically do those calculations to make adjustments to your data. Because we don't want to penalize you for increasing the size of your building from your baseline year. So there are building stock change adjustments that happen after the scenes. What else do I have? Oh, I want to do one more thing in organized data, and that is kind of show. So when you click on the upper portion of the building, so not the actual facilities themselves, but like the city, town, or entity, it's going to bring you to the higher level documents. So you could click and see the accounts there. That water account would have been assigned under here before, but it's gone now. You can click on all of the items that were on the previous screen if you wanted to look at it. The permitting too. The permitting is one of the things that you have to report on as being part of a green community. and I do go over this in the annual reports as well about how to put this. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but any permitting that you're doing in the town that has to do with criteria 1 and 2, which are the renewable energy permitting data and the expedited permitting process, has to be done under here. Not all permitting for the community. We don't want, like the Jones across the street put in solar panels on the roof. We don't want that. We just want any permitting that has to do with how you were designated as a green community. That can be confusing if you're not real familiar with the criteria, but certainly reach out to me if you have questions about that, or your regional coordinators, and they can let you know how your community was designated. ECMs. ECMs stand for energy conservation measures. And we want to know what your ECMs are. This is how we know what's been successful at buildings. This is how we know what you're planning on in certain buildings. And even if you were planning one and it didn't work out, then you can what's the term we use for it? Abandon. You can abandon it. But we want to know like what you're planning. So this is another really common annual report question. After we reviewed your annual reports, if you didn't put any energy conservation measures in, we're probably going to reach out to you and say, can you please put your energy conservation measures in? Because you should have something planned. And like I said, even if you're like, we're looking at retro commissioning at the elementary school, and we're hoping to have that done next year. If it doesn't go through, just the next year, just say it was abandoned, it wasn't worth it, it was too costly, not enough energy savings, kind of thing. We want you to be updating us on what measures you have planned over the next year, or year plus. Let's say 5 or more years, and they're not hard to add either. You can add a new ECM. So I'll add one for what should I do this for? The high school again. So I would say this is weatherization. So window, door, weather stripping, and you can do this under the main category of the city or town, or you can do it under each different facility in there too. So this is weatherization. It's planned. We're planning it. So we want to do 06. So next year we're going to do it, and it should take a month to complete. Hopefully not that long. It's going to save, like what kind of fuel is it going to save? And these are estimates. So it's going to save 1,200 therms of gas. So $2,400. We expect it to cost $15,000. We're hoping green communities, fingers crossed, will pay some of that. And then the utility, we're expecting them to pay the rest of that. And so, that can be added in here as well. Another cool thing about MEI that we've done over the past few years is we've gotten all of the vehicles from the town. This one are all vehicles that I made up or I found online. This Toyota Prius was my old vehicle, and I just put in the VIN number and it came up. So these are just vehicles that I've added in here. But normally this would be full of vehicles. When you go to the vehicle section under the main part in MEI, you're going to see a list of vehicles that we got from the RMV. So the Registry of Motor Vehicles gives us a list of all of the registered vehicles in Massachusetts that have municipal plates on them. That's an important part, the municipal plates. And they give us a list of all the VIN numbers in there and who the owner is. So we try and match up. Sometimes the owner is like a leasing company, and then like the secondary owner is the city or town. Or sometimes it's assigned to the wrong owner because the records aren't perfect, just like all records in this world. And so we go through an effort to assign them to the right cities and towns, and then we upload them into MEI. Now, and the reason that I could have asked them for all of the owners of those vehicles, But then I ran the risk of getting like undercover police vehicles or vehicles that we didn't want to have in here. So I only wanted vehicles that had municipal plates in here. But one thing that we are missing from that is municipal vehicles that got electric vehicle plates. So if you got electric vehicle plates for some of your electric vehicles, they're not automatically going to go in here because there's no municipal plate that also has electric vehicles. I've actually been in talks with some people about how we could change those plates a little bit and maybe just have like a insignia on the license plate to say electric vehicle. And so it would be a municipal plate with just an insignia on it that would have an electric vehicle, but that's not going to happen, especially not for this year, and probably not for next year either. So if you do have electric vehicles that you know of in the fleet, you'd have to add those manually in here. But I think we did a good job of getting the vast majority of vehicles, which we never had before, and now we do. So that's a little bit about organized data. And I am going to, I'll stop there for questions. Actually, it's probably another good time to stop for questions. Yeah, Kai.
Thanks. I'm looking at the vehicle stock of our town and MEI right now, and I see red markings. And
yeah, it's a good question.
I looked up red with control F in the FAQs, but I couldn't find anything.
Okay. So the red markings mean that they don't meet the fuel efficient vehicle policy. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily a violation yet. But it means that, so one of the great things about getting the vehicles and getting the VIN numbers from the registry is that we were able to, you'll probably see on here, it says Data One software. And the Data One software is the VIN number decoder that we use. We pay some money for it, but I know it saves us a lot of time by having to do all this. But normally when a green community would report every year, they would have to report on all the vehicles they bought, and they would tell us all the miles per gallon. They have to look them all up individually in the EPA's fueleconomy.gov website, and then type it in. And they'd be all over the place. You wouldn't know what trim it was, but this company does all of the decoding for us for the miles per gallon. Sometimes they're not able to get it because it could be an odd trim, or they just don't have it yet. So if it's red, it means that it doesn't meet our fuel efficient vehicle policy. But more common than not, it's those are usually police vehicles. Now, don't assume that they're police vehicles, but there often will be like a Ford, a Ford Explorer, or something. And what you would do as the energy manager, the submitter in here, is you would contact the town and say, these vehicles don't meet our fuel efficient vehicle policy. Which ones of these are emergency response? And if they are emergency response, you would then, so let's say this Ford Explorer Police Interceptor, right? This could be, say I contact the town, they're like, yeah, this is a emergency response vehicle. Then you can go in here and click that it is an emergency response vehicle. Let me cancel this. I think that it might not show up on here because this is the beta site. But when you do add a new vehicle, it asks whether it's emergency response and then what kind of emergency response it is. But I know in the old system it would too. That might be a bug because I noticed it wasn't showing that in here yet, whether it was emergency response or not. And then you wouldn't be able to click whether it was a violation, was it approved or not. Oh, fuel efficiency violation. Nope, you wouldn't be able to click that. So, but yeah, if it is a different color, then that's likely what it was. Yeah, Rebecca.
Hi, so I tried like entering an ECM, and the one that I wanted to do, it's like an electrification project, so there's going to be gas savings, but then like an electric penalty.
Yeah.
How do you add multiple fuel sources for savings, and can you put in negative numbers?
Yeah, you should be able to put it in negative. If you go back into it, you can write add new in there. And
Do I
then,
need to save it first to add new?
yeah, you'd save it first.
Oh, okay. That's that answers my
So
question. Thank
you
you.
see on the screen here, I put in
Yeah.
negative 15,000.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
And Mark,
Good question.
just as a time check, we have about 35 minutes, so we have
Great.
5 minutes at the end. Thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna jump to reports because reports is important. I knew I wasn't gonna stick to the time. I don't know why I thought I was gonna be able to do that. Let me just go back to the PowerPoint screen. So the report section, can you guys see the PowerPoint now?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the report screen right here that a lot of you will see when you when you click on the reports button at the top. See the star report section on here. There's the overview. The overview is nice. It shows just a high level overview of your data. So these are like more the dashboard views, right? If I just want to get an overview of all my buildings, this includes buildings to target, facility dashboard. There's the tables view. If I want to organize things in tables, like on what kind of category the facilities are in. And then there's the data loaded detail. Somebody asked about can I just get like a kind of a spreadsheet view of all my accounts? That's data loaded detail. That's my favorite report because it gives that huge overview. Sometimes it's more data than you want or need, but I like it. The legacy reports are what the old MEI used to have. So annual report table 2. The annual reports used to be in a spreadsheet that we would have everyone fill out. And guess which table this was on? It was on table 2. So that's why it was always called annual reports table 2. ERP guidance table 3. So the ERP is the energy reduction plan that communities would have to fill out when they became a green community. And table 3 of that plan was always the ERP guidance. So to make it really easy when they were completing their designation process, we had one specific table that said, we want you to take a snapshot of this and then send it to us in your energy reduction plan. And that's the ERP table 3. We still had a need for that, so we kept it in there. The ESCO report is your energy savings contract company that could be doing some work for you. This was still a popular report that a lot of people used. You could probably recreate it for some of the other ones, but we just kept the ESCO report in there as well. And then the use and cost tables. What we'll caution about the cost tables is that oftentimes when people are hurrying to do their annual reports, they're just going to put in the usage data and not the cost data. So if you're, Beth mentioned earlier, garbage in, garbage out. If you just put in usage data in the past and didn't tie costs to it, it's going to look like you had really cheap energy over those years. So just be conscious of what people did in prior years with the cost data. And then there's the MEI Plus reports. There's the climate leaders. So similar to ERP guidance table 3, we put in a climate leaders top buildings report because part of becoming a climate leader is you have to report on your top buildings. And this report will tell you what your top buildings are in your community based on emissions. The oddball in here is the emissions factors report. This has nothing to do with your data. This is really these are the constants of energy data, the emissions data that exist out there. This is how we convert things. So if you have a kilowatt of electricity that's coming in, and we want to convert that into MMBTUs, which is this is interesting. 1 BTU is approximately equivalent to burning 1 match, and an MMBTU is 1,000,000 BTUs. So it's like burning 1,000,000 matches. If we want to convert that into it, then we have this constant that'll allow us. But a lot of people request these emissions factors from us because they're like, well, why do I have so much emissions this year, I'm running it through this calculator. It looks different than this online calculator I'm using. So we're just very open about what we use in here. And then, when we convert natural gas into CO2 or CO2 equivalent, that one stays constant. But the confusing thing is electricity doesn't. So because electricity is gonna change over time, the cleaner the grid gets. So as we add in more renewable energy to the grid, electricity emissions drop over time, which is why we're trying to electrify everything. If we put in an oil system right now, the amount of CO2 it burns today is going to be the same amount it burns 20 years from now, assuming it's using the same amount. But electricity today is going to create less carbon emissions than electricity 20 years from now, because we're expecting the grid to become cleaner over time. So we talk about our emissions factors in there if you're interested in it. And then you'll also see a lot of these underneath have weather normalized versions of it. So weather normalized version is, it kind of answers the question of, did my facility do good this year compared to last year? But what about, even though it was way colder last year? So it looks at the temperatures outside, and it tries to normalize them based on weather. But it only does it for facilities, and it only does it for certain fuels too. Like it's not going to normalize your streetlights. Your streetlight doesn't matter what the temperature is outside for your streetlight, so that's going to stay the same. Or your wastewater treatment plant. It doesn't normalize those things. It only does the facilities. So you'll often see the weather normalized version of these reports on here too, which can be really useful. Okay, I wanna share. Go back to MEI right now. Can you see MEI again?
We can.
Great. So I'm going to go to the reports and go through these. So the overview report, this is for Trainsburg. And I'm going to click off. So you'll see like there's a big drop in FY26. Oh, we barely used any energy that year. It's because FY26 is only a few months old and I haven't entered any data for it yet. So I'm going to automatically click off FY26 and just see how fuel has changed over the years. And I do notice something in here, oddly enough. The gasoline data, it looks like it jumped a lot during that time, which is odd and something to keep in mind. It has a nice report in here about any building that's over 200 square feet with the highest EUI, right? So the historic museum, wow, that's a really inefficient building. Maybe I should think about looking at that building, or maybe I shouldn't, because if I look at some of the other dashboards, that building really doesn't, if I look at, say, not this one. If I look at like the organized data view of the facilities, and I want to look at it from an MMBTU perspective, the high school is by far the most energy intense building out there, biggest energy user. The historic museum is one of the least on there. So that's one caveat when looking at your EUI, is that you could have an incredibly inefficient building out there, but it might not be necessarily it might be worth your time, but it might not be, because it's not one of your biggest users out there. Even though it's inefficient, there could be some really low hanging fruit on there, but it might be worth looking at this top part of all of these buildings to focus on those, as opposed to the little guys and gals down here. In the organized data view, you can look at it from MMBTU, and in green communities, we used to say that's how we keep score. We keep score by MMBTU. You can also look at it from metric tons of CO2. And I'm going to take 26 off of there right now. So the metric tons of CO2, the vehicles by far are using a lot more fuel than a lot more energy than a lot of these other buildings, or creating a lot more emissions, I should say, than a lot of these other buildings. Some things to keep in mind, though, when you're looking at vehicles is one is that they have a lot more turnover than buildings do, and their useful life isn't as long as facilities. So you have to balance, like, do I want to focus on the HVAC system that's going to have a useful life of 20 plus years in one of these buildings, or do I want to focus on a vehicle that could have a useful life of 5 years or so? So what effect is that going to have on the long-term function and emission savings for the municipality? So you can look at it from this is MtCO2e is metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So it converts everything into carbon dioxide equivalency. You can look at native units. I look at the native units a lot. You can sort it by facility. So I can see that the water treatment plant here, how much oil it's used over the past years, how much electric it's used. So this is a really good way to look at like the total amounts on here. The cost, like I said before, sometimes people haven't put in the cost, so it's not always entirely reliable. The EUI, you can even sort it by EUI on here, which is nice. I mentioned the historic building has a really bad EUI, but it might not create as much emissions, so it might not be a good target for some. And then the use and cost can be on here too. I'm gonna go back to the reports. My favorite one is the data loaded detail. So, and I like data loaded detail just because it throws everything up there. When I'm looking for problems in here, I'll often look at the data loaded detail. Now, I mentioned earlier the gasoline looked kind of odd, like there looked like to be a really big jump in gasoline. So one thing I could look at, instead of looking at all of this right here, when I hover over here in the fuel type, you'll see it says only when I hover over a fuel type. So I'm going to go, I only want to see gasoline. And I'm looking at the gasoline and I can see, yep, okay, that makes sense. Used 108 in FY22. Maybe they implemented some measures. It dropped down to, in FY24, dropped down to 91,000 gallons, 93, and then 92. That makes sense. But you'll see this 92 was entered, instead of it being entered in Q1 of 26, it was entered in Q4 of 25. So when you have delivered fuels, remember I said that it might only, like that's when you have it delivered, right? That's not actually when you have it used. So this is going to make your FY25 data look double, unless you had put it into the FY26 data. A lot of this fuel is going to be used in FY26. So making sure that it's going into the correct fiscal year. Ideally, you'd have all of this when it's used, and it'd show every month of when it's used, but that's not always possible. Usually at the end of the year, you'll put in the data for that fuel, and then it'll factor it in. But this is going to make the gasoline data look twice as much in here. And I'm gonna leave that in there, but I'll show you another step before I fix that. Reports, annual report table 2. This is what used to be the report that we would report on for the annual reports every year for green communities. So we split them up into categories. Let me take off 26 of buildings, street lights. This is like, I kind of took this from some real towns too, this data just somewhat based off of real towns. But you can clearly see like the streetlights, and this is very common for streetlights, is that all of a sudden one year you'll see that they're 50% of the year before that. And that's typically when a community updated their streetlights to LEDs. They switched over to LEDs over 1 year. So this is, even though I would be looking at this and being like, oh, that's too big of a jump. How did that happen? This is usually explainable by an LED change. The vehicles, I mentioned before too, how it all of a sudden doubles here because it's wrong, and I need to go fix that data. And then the water sewage is on the bottom here too. And then these are all just the different changes. So I would be able to see also how big of a change there was since the baseline year of this 86% in here. I want to show you the emissions factors. So MMBTU, we have all of the different types to convert, biodiesel or diesel or gas into MMBTU, and even solar energy, solar electric. Even though solar electric is a clean fuel, you'll see that it's exactly the same as as electricity, because it has the same amount of energy in it. So when we're keeping score in terms of MMBTU, a kilowatt of solar energy is the same as a kilowatt of grid energy. But when I go down to MTC, metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, the electric, you'll see over time, it starts to decrease and decrease and decrease until hopefully, I mean, this is the plan, is that it's almost nothing by a certain date. Looks like that's wrong. I got to change that. But solar electricity will be zero because we don't assign carbon dioxide to that, but we would assign MMBTUs to it. So if you want to look at all the factors in here, that's that. And then there's also an option in here to export all of your data. If you want to do it yourself, you want to do your own kind of studies on it in Excel or something, it is the town's data, and we want to be able to give that to them so they would be able to export it too. And I think it comes out as like a CSV file or something like that. Is there anything in the reports features? Anybody have any questions on reports before I go into the MEI Plus features? No. Okay, I'm going to go to the MEI Plus features right now.
Do you want to do our poll before we jump into there?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, do the poll.
So folks, we have one more learning check question. So which has more MMBTUs, 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity from solar PV or 1,000 kilowatt hours of grid electricity? Give you guys a minute for that one. You have 10 more seconds if you haven't responded yet. Okay, I'm going to end this poll. I saw a question from Christine in the chat, and then we'll move on to MEI features, plus features. So most of you got it right. It's equal. Mark, I can pass this back to you if you want.
Sure. Yeah, it reminds me of that question, like what's bigger, like a pound of feathers or a pound of rocks, right? Like they're both a pound. Or like which one weighs more kind of thing. But they are equal. In terms of how much energy is being used, the solar energy is equal to that. You could make I bet you could probably make the academic argument, like like where it comes from, maybe more energy went into making it from like a life cycle analysis potentially, but we're looking at it from just how much energy the building's using. And exactly, the CO2 emissions will absolutely be different. So but part of how we think about green communities, or how I think about a building under green communities, I think most of us do, is that we want to save energy in there first. Grid for sure has more MMBTUs from the source, right? If you're looking at it from a life cycle analysis, it would. But we're looking at it at what it's using at the building. And one of the ways that I like to look at it is that we want you to make your building as energy efficient as possible first, because even if you get all of your energy from solar, you should still try and conserve a lot of that energy first before you have to do it. Because if you make your building as tight as possible, as energy efficient as possible, that's less solar that you would need to add to the roof of your building in order to use at the source of that building. But in terms of it being used at the building, it's equal. All right. I knew I was going to get some questions on that one too. I was like, oh, life cycle analysis is probably going to be a lot more. But in terms of how we look at it, we're looking at it at the building itself. All right, let's go to some of the MEI Plus features. So annual reports are going to be the ones that folks are going to use the most on here, and very, very soon if they haven't already started using it. Once again, this is not supposed to be an annual report presentation. This is an overall MEI presentation. I do have separate presentations under the support section if you're interested in learning more about annual reports. We also have office hours too, that we can list. If you look at the past newsletters, you'll see the places that we have office hours, where you also have to listen to me talk about answer your questions. But Lauren's there too, so it makes it nice because she can answer some of those questions as well. And if you have more specific questions about your community on there, you can ask annual report questions. Don't take a while to start annual reports. I will note too that, if you're planning on submitting the day it's due, that's a really bad idea, because you need someone to sign your report. Part of the submission process at the end is to have the town CEO sign off on it. So you would need to have a lot of towns, especially where I live in Western Mass. A lot of towns are closed on Fridays too. So you might not even get their signature during that time. So you want to complete the annual report early, get the signature, upload it, and then submit it to us. So this is the first screen for the annual report process. Talks about, just continue to the next step. Site review, regulations, permitting, these are criteria 1 and 2. And they'll cover we want to make sure that how you were designated as a green community is correct. So you would say, yeah, this all looks correct to me, save and continue. Do you have any changes to your zoning regulations? Most towns don't, some towns do, especially in the past few years where, solar zoning, they could have zoning changes that maybe some of them put a moratorium on their solar on their solar and new solar projects. And if that's the case, then we want to know about those, because that would affect your green community. It could affect your green community standing. And you don't have to complete all these in order. So you can jump around. I can skip this one, go right to permitting. I can go right to building stock, and then you can save and continue, and it'll save these as well. So you can always come back to them as well, which is good because you can have multiple people working on them. When we used to just have a spreadsheet, it was really difficult for people to complete them and share the file with one another. You may remember the Trainsburg High School building stock change that I just put in. It increased from 210,000 to 230,000. So yeah, I did that. That looks correct to me. So I'm going to save and continue. If you have a regional school, and if the regional school is part of your energy reduction plan and community's baseline, then it'll show up in here. You can't change this. Only we can change this on our end. So if you have a community and you take, say, 10% the responsibility of the regional school, then that would show up under here. And we would assign that 10% to that regional school, and it would show up in this section, the energy summary section. So I'm going to jump to the energy summary section right now. And this community does not have a regional school, so this one's 0 on here, but this would fill in numbers in there if it did happen. And also the building stock changes are automatically put in here. So this is saying that this is removing 577 MMBTU from the calculations because of that building stock change that occurred, so that the extra energy that it's using, it's not detrimental to the community's overall energy use. We're not dinging them for growth, essentially. You'll like when I'm looking at this right now, and when our reviewers are looking at this, the first thing that draws my eye is this vehicle, is that big jump in vehicle that we talked about before, how it was put in the wrong year. So if I'm seeing that, I could go to the reports, as I showed you before, the data loaded detail, gasoline, and we went through the process of seeing like, oh yeah, this was put in the wrong month in here. One of the new features in MEI that we rolled out recently is that you can just click on the account number under here, and it'll bring you to the organized data screen automatically, where that number is located. So you'll see that every year they've put in on July 1st, but this past year they put it on June 30th. So if I change that to July 1st, then it'll move it into the next fiscal year. So I go back to reports, data loaded detail, and I want to do the update on here. I gotta refresh this screen. Gasoline. And now it's on Q1 of 2026, which is where we want it. So I can go back to the annual reports, the energy summary screen, and now that looks a lot better. Still a little high. Maybe the community just used more that year. In around where I live in Western Mass, I never said that. A lot of the communities out here will use a lot more vehicle fuel than they use facility fuel. And it's not weather normalized, but I can usually tell by looking at the energy data when we had a lot of snow, because that will jump a lot in their vehicle use because they're using so much for plowing those years. So it's and we don't normalize for that, even though some communities have asked, but we haven't done it. But sometimes that's the result of the fluctuations in changes on here. It hasn't affected the weather normalize. Weather normalize I think it won't update for 24 hours. So because it takes so much computing power, you can read in the FAQ about weather normalization, how it happens, all the magic potions, stuff and formulas that go into it. It's complicated, but it takes a lot of computing power, so it doesn't happen until overnight. The energy narrative is another place that we look at. If you do have, if I want to say like, yeah, that vehicle fuel use, I know there's a jump in there, but that was legit. Like you would write in there, lost snow this year, that's why our vehicle increased so much. What we like about the narrative and why we request that so much is it gives you a chance to describe why you might have had big changes in or anything in your energy use that year, because we're going to ask you about it. If we see big fluctuations in there, we're going to ask you about your energy use. And this could stop us from asking you another question and holding up us approving your annual report. So this is an important part of it. I am going to stop there. I wanted to talk about the roadmap, because there are some other advanced features. They're not on the beta site, they're on the old site, where you can actually project out energy data, and even put in information about like more advanced features of your buildings, like what hot water does it use? When are you planning on I'm not going to show it because I can't sign in quickly. So I'm going to go over to do one last PowerPoint. I just want to show something on here. All right. Can you guys see the PowerPoint now?
Yep.
Okay, so this is an example of like some of the things that we're looking at on the organized, like through the annual report process. This is a real community on here, which is why I have everything blurred out. We were looking at like, why is there such a huge jump in your transfer station? Why was there a big jump in the MMBTUs at your transfer station? And this happened around 2022, where, and we contacted the community. They're like, we have no idea why there's such a big jump in there. And so, we started looking at other reports and said, oh, your electricity went from 2,000 to 12,000 at your transfer station, which isn't a significant. I mean, it's a lot, but it's not, it's not going to make or break the community. And we contacted them and they said, well, we got a cardboard baler at our transfer station. I'm like, okay, well, it's using a lot of energy. They're like, yeah, but we save some money because we don't have to send our cardboards out in like a big thing. But it's using so much more than the money that they were saving. And then they looked into it more. They had their town DPW person look into it, and they found out that there was like a warming cycle that would go into in the winter, that it's making sure that it didn't freeze up or something like that. And that was running 24/7 in here. So this is a really small example of, just by looking at energy data, how you can say like something's not right here. Something's not right in this gigantic jump in energy data. And that's something that we're trying to build into MEI a little bit more, because all of this has to be found manually right now by us looking into it. But we want to, over the next 3 years in this next cycle of energy, we're trying to build into more alerts and notifications, but we don't want you to hate MEI and alert you too much. So we're trying to like find a good balance of how do we fit all those into there. I already did that. Okay, that's it for me. Let's stop there. Sorry for going a little over.
No, you're fine. Did you want to touch on the vehicle transfer?
Oh yeah. Let's see how many people know this, because I was gonna talk about vehicle transfers in the annual report, but let's throw this up and see if, even though I didn't mention it, how many people know the answer to it.
Okay, take 10 more seconds. Give you less time this time. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll. So tell us, Mark.
Yeah, so that's great. I'm really impressed. Like, most people got it. Yes, only if the vehicle being transferred is more fuel efficient than the vehicle's replacing. In the fuel efficient vehicle policy, you'll see that it's under vehicle. It's called vehicle recycling. So you can, and this this is within the past 5 years, we allowed communities to do this. You can transfer vehicles, but the new vehicle has to be more efficient than, or the vehicle being transferred has to be more efficient than the vehicle it's replacing. So it doesn't necessarily have to meet the fuel efficient vehicle policy. If it meets the fuel efficient vehicle policy, then it's all good. It doesn't even need to, be more efficient, but it'd be great if it does. So yeah, I'm really impressed that a lot of folks got that.
Great. And then do you want to just talk about the upcoming events?
Yeah, I think Lauren also put in there the, we have the office hours that are occurring. The next big one is the Green Community Summit. We hope a lot of you can come to that. That's in November. And we have some other, I mean, the big one is the annual report. Everyone's got to do their annual report by the 7th. Oh, regional coordinators. You should all know your regional coordinators by now. They're awesome. There they are. Contact them if you have questions. Contact me if you have questions. If you have questions about MEI, contact MEI support. We're all here to help you. We just We want to save energy. We want to make sure that your communities and you succeed at this, because it's our jobs and we love our jobs.
Mark, an enormous thank you for all of the insights, feedback, answering questions that you offered today. Oh, you had one more slide. But these are the office hours, right, for annual reports that's due on November 7th. Just want to clarify, this is different from the MESM Academy office hours. That is just kind of a general catch-all category for any questions that you have related to our training and resources. The office hours that you see on the screen and that Lauren put in the chat are specifically for the Green Communities office hours. Thank you, Mark. Okay, and just to close us out, upcoming events. Next Monday, there is a training on grant reporting requirements. Lori, if you are still on, maybe not. Oh, you are. If you wanted to give a quick 30-second plug about it, feel free to come off mute. No worries if not. Then on October 22nd, we have our office hours, and then October 27th, there's a Mass Save training on Mass Save program and incentives. I know some folks have already exited the chat or the meeting, but if you can please take the next 3 to 5 minutes to complete the anonymous feedback form that we're going to put in the chat. Oh yeah, Samiksha, thank you so much for already doing that. It's short, your responses are anonymous. Just want to make sure that we can continuously improve these trainings moving forward. So I'll give you the last 3 minutes. And as Samiksha put, the slides and the training are all going to be uploaded on our MESM Academy website. So you'll be able to refer back to the recording and slides there. So please take the next couple minutes to fill out that really short evaluation form. And in the meantime, as folks are filling that out, if there are any kind of priority questions that come up for you while we have Mark for the next 3 minutes, feel free to come off mute and ask any final questions. Go ahead, Kai.
I'm not sure whether you can say this because it probably is different from community to community, but roughly speaking, would you be able to wager an estimate on how many hours we should plan in for the annual report? I'm also asking because I'm only reporting for Milton and I work there 2 days a week.
Yeah, that's going to be really difficult to say, because some communities are going to have more delivered fuels than others. They're going to be different sizes than others. Your experience is going to be different for communities. The only advice I could say is just start it early. You know, the earlier you start the process, the more prepared you are going to be to carry it through to the end.
Got it.
I have a quick question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
For a vehicle that was in orange, like highlighted orange, which
Yeah.
it doesn't meet the fuel standard transfer, do I just need to if it is designated as a police emergency, it's okay? But if it's not,
yeah, never assume that it's a police emergency vehicle, because
right.
I mentioned the police or the recycling policy, and that's often where folks will transfer one vehicle from another. Is when they're done in the police fleet, they'll transfer it. So even though it could be police trim on it, it might not be being used as a police vehicle. But once you there is a spot in there to say, like, is it emergency response? If you select that it's police patrol, it should not be yellow or orange or that color anymore once you've made that change.
So what happens if I find out that it's not an emergency
If it's a violation,
response? Right.
Yeah, then it'd be a violation, and then you would have to go through the violation process of, and you'd have to talk to your regional coordinator about that, and you know, we'd bring you through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks, Mark. Recognizing we're at 3 p.m., just want to give everyone a shout out. Thank you again for your attention, for your attendance. Mark, thank you very much for all of the time that you took
Thanks
today.
for having me.
Of course. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
No. I was removing the last couple stragglers.
You want to unrecord?